Hey everybody, this is your skeletal system for bone growth. I am going to go kind of fast during these, so I'm going to start putting stuff up, but please feel free to go ahead and pause whenever you need to so that you can get your stuff written down. Alright, so first thing, bone growth and development. The skeletal system starts forming during the first 2 weeks of prenatal development. So at about 2 weeks, the fetus is only 12 millimeters big. That's about half an inch. So it's very, very small. You'll see a picture later on about what it looks like as it forms. Your bones do continue to grow as you go into adulthood. Some of your bones, not all of them, but some of your bones keep growing all the way till you're 25. So first, start with bone, your osseous tissue. So os, O-S-S, or osseous, or osseo, O-S-S-E-O, all mean bone. So whenever you see that, you know we're talking about bone. Remember, bone is an organ. Organs are made out of tissue. So that's what we're looking at now. So that bone tissue is made up of about 2%, or sorry, not 2%, specialized cells, which make up 2% of your body or bone weight. Then we also have some strong flexible matrix. The matrix is made up of calcium phosphate crystals, and that calcium phosphate, that takes up about 2/3 of your bone weight. So that's the majority of where the weight from your bones comes from. And then there's also collagen fibers that help make up your bone. Tissue is made up of cells. So there's 4 major cells that we're going to go over. The first main one is one we've already talked about, and that's osteocytes. So those are mature bone cells. You should have written it down on the worksheet that we did earlier this week. So again, osteo, O-S-T-E-O, means bone. Cyte means cell. So bone cell. The main job of osteocytes is to maintain and monitor the protein and mineral content in the matrix, which is again about 2/3 of the weight of your bone. Osteocytes also help repair damaged bone, transport nutrients and waste to nearby cells. So here is a picture of an osteocyte right in here. And here's another one. This is like the one we saw before. So this little dark spot is an osteocyte. This kind of circle, that's an osteon, osteocyte. The next type of cell we're going to talk about is what makes osteocytes. So osteoblast. Again, osteo means bone, blast forming. So these cells, new bone matrix, they actually make the bone, and that's called osteogenesis. Osteogenesis. These eventually will become osteocytes as they mature. Some pictures of those. These are the ones I like the way they look. So this is a really good microscope. So you can see it really in depth. Here's a little bit further away. The next cells we're going to look at are the osteoprogenitor. These are stem cells. So these are the ones that turn into osteoblasts. So they divide into osteoblasts, so it's osteoprogenitor, make osteoblasts, osteoblasts make your osteocytes. These are important at times of breaks in your bone because they very quickly convert to osteoblasts so we can form new bone quicker so your bone can heal. And then the last one we're going to talk about is the osteoblast. So it literally means bone breaker. Sometimes these are called bone destroyers. So you might be wondering why we would need something that dissolves the matrix, actually dissolves the bone, and it uses acids and enzymes to do that. It's called osteolysis. When it does that, it releases and then reabsorbs the materials into the bone. Why we need this? First, it can help break up pieces of bone. So old bone that maybe something happened in a break, it will go ahead and break that down so our bodies can reabsorb the minerals. And then for remember, bone is a living tissue. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Bone is a living tissue. So we constantly have to be replacing those cells to keep it strong, just like our skin. So the osteoclast breaks down old bone cells and then leaves room for the new bone cells, the new bone to form. So pictures of that. Those are really big cells, have 50 plus nuclei. So they're really, really big compared to our other ones. Next one is matrix. Bone matrix. That's a portion of the connective tissue. Remember, bone is a connective tissue. It's made up of extracellular protein fibers and a ground substance. Solid material is made up of calcium salts and contains packaged liquid, which contain bone cells with the osteocytes. And those are found near blood vessels. So I'll show you a picture of this. This is when I talk about bone matrix, this is what I'm talking about. And this is what normal bone matrix looks like. Okay, this is healthy. This is not healthy bone matrix. And this one, there's lots of different things that can cause this. This one in particular is caused by osteoporosis. And so a lot of calcium has been lost and it's made the bone weak. Osteoporosis affects the spinal column or your vertebra. Okay, so ossification, formation of bone. There are two types of ossification. So the first one we're going to talk about is formation, intramembranous bones. Intramembranous bones. And so that occurs usually in the deep layers of the dermis. It usually forms your flat bones, like the ones in your skull, your clavicle, your mandible. Those are all intramembranous bones. Okay, the next slide, I am going to give you how it forms. You will not need to copy it, but please copy this. Here is a picture. So the one on the left, so this is what I said earlier about you'll see like an even earlier picture of a fetus. So this is very, very, very early on. I mean, the brain is just starting to form. But these bones right here in the skull, that is intramembranous bones. These are starting to form. And again, you can see all the little bones starting to form. Okay, we'll talk about this type of formation coming up before even a lot of your other body systems are forming. Okay. So the next one is, again, you do not have to copy this down. These are just the steps of formation. So we have some mesenchymal cluster cells, or cells that cluster. They secrete organic components which become crystallized, they harden. And the mesenchymal cells then become osteoblasts within the ossification center. Ossification center is just the first place that ossification takes place. And ossification means bone forming. Bone grows out from the ossification center to form spicules. And then blood vessels form in the area to provide oxygen and nutrients to bone. Because again, remember, bone growth is active. They are living things. And as the growth slows, as they start to reach how big they're supposed to be, osteoblasts near the surface become less active. Okay. You might be wondering how those blood vessels, because we looked earlier this week, how do those blood vessels get in the middle of bone? Well, when you look at number 2, those blood vessels are forming in the area and the bone actually grows around it. So it's not like they just kind of travel through a tunnel in the bone. The bone actually grows around it. All right, second one that we're going to talk about is endochondral ossification. And that begins as masses of cartilage, and that's later replaced by bone tissue. Endo means inside, chondral means cartilage. So again, ossification, formation of cartilage. I'm going to take you back real quick. Want to look at the picture again. The rest of these bones, your ribs, your your radius, your ulna, your humerus, your leg bones, your pelvic girdle, those are all formed by endochondral ossification. Okay, so you already did that. All right, so formation. You do not have to write this part down. This is the steps, and there's 6 steps. So the first one is the cyst, which is the cartilage cells, increase in size, and eventually they cut off from the nutrients. So they're going to die because it goes away from the oxygen and the nutrients it needs. Blood vessels grow into the perichondrium cells in this area and turn into osteoblasts. Blood vessels get center spongy bone. It's produced at the primary center of ossification. Narrow cavity is created, increases in length and diameter. And the epiphysis begins to calcify, secondary ossification center, and develops due to capillary formation. And the epiphysis is filled with spongy bone, and epiphyseal cartilage is formed to separate the diaphysis from the epiphysis. And if you are curious about this, there is a really good section in chapter 6 that you can look at, and it will explain this more in depth, but I'm not going to test you on this. This one you do not have to write down. I did just talk about epiphyseal cartilage, so I want to talk about what it is or what it does real quick. As you get older, it becomes more narrow. And so that it becomes more narrow because of increased hormone release as the hormones that you get as you get older. And that causes osteoblasts to form faster than the cartilage. And so we see less cartilage and more bone forming. This one you don't have to write down. Again, this is a fun fact, maybe not for the astronauts. Astronauts experience a 1% loss of bone mass per month in space. So they are under microgravity conditions, which means there's no pressure being put on their bones. Osteoclast, which is the bone breaker, the bone destroyer, increases, and the osteoblast, the one that makes the bone, decreases. So there's a greater loss of spongy bone and compact bone. And so astronauts that are up there for several years could have like a 50% bone loss occurrence. Remember, people, when they go up to space, they're up there for a long time. So usually at least a year. Once in a while, it's about 6 months, but usually at least a year. But they're making a several-year commitment. So when they do come back, they are put through some exercises and high calcium diet and things like that to help recover this bone loss. I'm coming into the last section, hormonal and nutritional effects on the bone. So nutrition, definitely you need calcium and phosphate salts in your diet. You can get that from certain fruits, veggies, and milk or dairy. You also need small amounts of magnesium, fluorine, iron, and manganese. Those are also important. And then vitamin C, A, K, and B12. K and B12 are used in protein formation. C and A help with bone formation. Vitamin C also helps with the bone mass and strength. Well, there's my picture of healthy foods. And I was going to Next slide, I'm going to talk about something called scurvy, and that has to do with vitamin C. I do want you guys to keep in mind that too much calcium or too much of any of these can make you sick, just like too little can also make you sick. So you do need to be careful. Exposure to sunlight. Most people don't think about this, but going outside, getting some sun is very important because the sunlight helps synthesize, which makes vitamin D. And so that's necessary for proper absorption of calcium in the small intestines. Because when you eat in your small intestine, so you break it down, and then in your small intestine, that's where everything's pulled out that you need. So all the vitamins that you need, the nutrients, everything that you need is pulled out into the small intestine. Everything you don't need goes into your large intestine, where it's then excreted out. So to help also with absorption, you need vitamin D, and then the kidneys release something called calcitrol, and that helps aid in absorption or digestion and then absorption of your calcium. If you don't have enough vitamin D, it can soften and deform bones. In children, it's called rickets, and in adults, it's called osteomalacia. So as you get older, your body just doesn't make as much vitamin D, so it is important to get probably around in your 40s to kind of keep an eye on things. You might want to maybe drink some milk with vitamin D in it. This is scurvy. So vitamin C helps keep scurvy away. This is only looking at what you can see, the hair follicles and nails, but it also, scurvy affects your bone mass and strength. So again, this is why having vitamin C in your diet is very important. And hormonal secretions. So first, we have the pituitary gland, and that secretes growth hormone. And I'm going to show you some slides about what happens when you get too much growth hormone in a minute. But that helps you with your growing. Your thyroid also secretes some hormones that help with the replacement of cartilage into bones. And then your sex hormones, testosterone for men, estrogen for women. And again, men, you do make some estrogen, just not very much. And females, you do have some testosterone, just not very much. Those help promote the forming of bone tissue. Physical exercise. So this is another reason that exercise is good for you, at least just walking. So stress, and I don't mean like we're all crazy stressed out because it's the end of the semester, but like putting pressure on your bones and your joints helps stimulate bone growth. So the bones of athletes are actually stronger because they put a lot of stress on their bones. A lack of exercise can result in thinner and weaker bones. There's something called osteopenia, and that is a lower than normal ossification due to mineral content, because as you get older, it's not just vitamin D that's harder to make. You start taking out more calcium from your bones, and your bones become weaker. So that starts usually right before the age of 40. And women, you lose about 8% in every decade, and men about 3%. So yes, women, that's why you see a lot of commercials about taking calcium supplements. So it is something, again, that you want to keep an eye on as you get older. Your spongy bone is the most affected by this loss, and it's usually in the vertebra, which is osteoporosis, which I showed you the picture of earlier, your jaw, and then the epiphysis, those two end parts of your long bones. Right here, so sometimes it's not just nutrition and exercise that has to do with bone issues. This has to do with heredity. It's a specific type of dwarfism and that I can barely pronounce, achondroplasia. And so it stopped this young lady from growing after her first birthday. She was 18 in 2011. So probably many of you, if you saw American Horror Show, she was on that. She's only about 2 feet tall. She is considered the world's shortest woman. And she only weighs about 12 pounds. She weighed 9 pounds at birth, so not very big. I mean, this is a normal 2-liter bottle. And the next one has to do with growth hormone. So this man, when he was 14, he had a benign brain tumor that stimulated his pituitary gland, and that caused the extra release of growth hormone. So he became really, 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 really tall. He lives in the Ukraine, and he's 37. He was a veterinarian, but he hates his height, so he refuses to be officially measured for the Guinness Book of Records. He absolutely hates his height. I mean, and you can see here, this is not a kid's playhouse. This is not a kid's table. This is a normal table that fits him like a kid's table. And I mean, he's sitting there holding the chandelier. Again, normal sized car. Most of us, the roof of a car would probably be up here somewhere, and it's literally at this man's waist. All right, and that is the end of our note for bone growth. So feel free to go back, finish anything that you need to. Thank you.